It's me, Clint, on a Friday. Today we don't have Ken. I know everybody's disappointed when Ken doesn't show up, but I'm sorry. It'll just be me from the OpenZiti team today. And today we have a pretty cool thing coming on. Let's pop up the old visual. We have a user spotlight. Why does it say drag to move? That's fun. User spotlight with a company called Intrusion, and we have a couple of guests here today, which is always exciting for us here on Ziti TV. So I'm going to have them come on in. Let's bring on Blake and let's bring on Chris. Hello, fellas.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and how are you guys?
Doing great.
Swimmingly.
Doing great. Now, I am located in Western New York. I have spoken to a fair number of intrusion people. Generally, I speak with people who are in Australia. Where are you fellas at? You don't sound Australian. I mean, maybe you just have moved there.
Well, we're in the Australia of America. We're in Texas, Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, Texas. Nice. Well, so that's what, Central Time? So it's
Oh,
10
yes,
o'clock
sir.
there? Nice,
Yeah.
nice. And so we were talking before ZD TV, and Chris was very sad that he didn't get a text out to his mother in time to show up on, so we could watch live. So, Chris, I want you to know this is going to be, it is streamed live, but it is also recorded in YouTube, and we can share it with the world. You can also send your mother to Twitter, and from Twitter, she can find the feed on there too. So if you're
Well,
interested,
I've just text my mother your cell phone number for technical
perfect.
support. So when Vicky calls, let her know how to get logged in.
I will do that. In fact, hopefully she'll be running OpenZiti so that I can RDP to her machine or VNC if it's a Mac. I don't know what kind of a machine she might be using, but there's no team viewer here. We're gonna just go straight RDP over OpenZiti.
All right.
Cool. All right, so thanks for joining again. You guys are from Intrusion, but I'd like to know a little bit about both of you. I've actually never met either of you before today, so why don't we start with Blake? Blake, what's your role and how did you get involved in this project?
Sure. My role is Vice President of Engineering at Intrusion. I've been at Intrusion 17 years. And before that, I managed wireless ISP and developed software for carrier grade telecom equipment. Working with a great engineering team in Australia, US, coast to coast, all working on the Shield family of products. And really, what we're trying to do is bring zero trust and capabilities to our customers to help secure their networks.
Nice, nice. And what about you, Chris?
My name's Chris Duzick. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at Intrusion. So I'm responsible for making sure we've got a great product and getting it in front of the right people to get it sold, and then ensuring that we find great partners like OpenZiti to work with as we go. I joined Intrusion with our CEO, Tony Scott. Before we joined, he and I were working together on an investment fund around new emerging technologies. Tony is a great guy to work with. He asked me to come help because I've run a couple of companies that had millions of global users on software, and so wanted somebody that could help scale what we're doing here. And matter of fact, interestingly enough, one of the co-founders of NetFoundry, Michael, is actually married to a Croatian whose family is about 100 miles from where my family was in Croatia, and so we
Is that right?
have an OpenZiti Croatian connection. And so anyway, so that's me.
So I actually have been lucky enough to visit Croatia on my honeymoon, which was many, many years ago now. Absolutely beautiful coastline. Like it really is. I can understand why Mike travels there. Mike does like to go back to Croatia, I'm sure. I don't know. Do you get to go back to Croatia at all?
I would go 3 or 4 times a year, and then I just got this urge to make protecting your cybersecurity better. And so I haven't been back but once in the last 2 years. I was
Nice.
hoping to spend June there this year, but we'll see. We're getting a lot of exciting traffic, so I'm not going to complain if I don't get to go.
Yeah, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. Well, you talked about the right partners and the product itself. So, we like to have people on to talk about the product and see how you're using OpenZiti. So, what actually is the product? Because I've seen some screenshots here and there, and I'm hopefully we'll see some screenshots today. But I've not been plugged in for probably a good 8 months. So I'm really excited to hear what you guys ended up doing and what the product is and what it does. Is it a single product? I think I heard you say it was a suite of products. It's called Shield, I think.
Yeah, we do. We have a suite of products called Shield. We have 3 versions of it today, which is on premise, so we can protect you in line in your data center with applied threat intelligence. The second product is Shield Cloud, which leverages some of the OpenZiti technology to give you zero trust in your cloud instance. And then we have Zero Trust Endpoint, which is live now on Androids and allows you to not only leverage the fabric from NetFoundry, but also do the private tunneling. And most importantly to us, understand who the device is talking to and block any malicious comm attempts.
Yeah. So is that what Shield does? Is it like a threat intelligence? Is that what I would call it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to share a screen or two here. I think we would
Sure. Let
say
me
that
pop it up for you.
what I would say at Intrusions, we believe network security could be simpler. And so what we've built is this sector called applied threat intelligence. And it is a category that we create and intend to dominate. So what that means is we help organizations use threat intelligence to apply threat intelligence, automated blocking, complete network visibility, and then integration of threat feeds to let us know who the bad actors are out there. And so our mission, what we do is we think we make it easier in a better way, and that's we use applied threat intelligence for that. And so the technology component of it is more detailed than that, and I can let Blake tell you about that, but this is kind of our mission. We want people to have the best intelligence actively blocking proactively on their network at all times, whether they're on the mobile device or they're in their office building.
So it's really neat. So you mentioned that you had 3 products: the on-prem, the cloud, and the endpoint. Are all of them Ziti enabled? Do they all have the zero trust baked into them? I know obviously Android does, you said, in the on-prem, but I'm wondering about the cloud. How does they all have it?
So it's a great question. The answer is at today in the market, our cloud product and our endpoint have OpenZiti baked in. We are in the process of pulling some features off of the appliance. And as we do that more, we'll have the opportunity to use some of the OpenZiti cloud stuff to get that off the box. So 2 of the 3 are live today and they're integrated.
That's really neat. And you said you had a mobile client. That's pretty cool. And they said it was Android. What about iOS? Is iOS on the roadmap?
Our intention is to get iOS out in the second half of the year. We took a pause and went ahead and dropped a consumer mobile application called Shield Mobile in the Google Store because we wanted to start seeing what consumers were doing. If you'll allow it, crowdsourcing what's going on and what they're blocking. And so as we went to focus on that, we pushed the Apple out to the second half of the year.
Now, and that's just because you focus on a different product. It's not
Yeah,
because some technological miss.
I mean, it's Apple, man. It's money and time.
Yeah.
And we thought we'd get more bang putting, really and truly, I wanted my kids to have Shield Mobile in their hands, and a lot of the team here did. So we went to the Google Store. It took us about 8 weeks to get there and get it going, but it was a decision to get more feedback. We aren't open source, but we love open source and we love community feedback. And so the mobile application has allowed us to talk directly with users who are focused on cybersecurity and get real-time feedback. And that was more valuable than going to the iOS immediately.
Yeah, it's an important initiative nowadays, the whole product-led growth idea, where you actually reach out and get input from the community. NetFoundry and OpenZiti also aspires to get that sort of feedback. Being open source, it is perhaps a bit easier to get the feedback because people can just fire up a GitHub comment or go to the discourse or whatever. But that's really neat. That's really neat. And so the Android app, the mobile endpoint, and that is to protect people wherever they are. Is it so I don't know if you saw, but we have a Ken Bingham. He is watching. Hi, Ken. Sounds like ZitiCon is going to be in Split. Count me in, which is cool. So is the app itself, does it do a split tunnel or does it do a full tunnel? Is it capturing all of your traffic?
Sure, and I can show you some diagrams of that.
Oh, sure.
So the Shield mobile client effectively is not quite split tunneling, but we group the internet or destinations into 2 different zones. One zone of that is your trusted zero trust network powered by the cloud Ziti. And so that's when you want to communicate with your mother's device to RDP into that, and really establishing the known endpoints that are established by that service. So the endpoints that you define that are your trusted network. Then the other zone is really the public internet. That's what's not defined by the Ziti cloud. That's infrastructure you don't necessarily own. That's the rest of the world. And so what we're trying to do with Shield Endpoint is to apply protection in a zero trust methodology for both of those zones. Certainly the Cloud Ziti and the OpenZiti protocol by which that operates, it gives you the protection to your own private network zones. But then we add that intrusion applied threat intelligence to the public internet zone. And so this is our threat reputation database, protecting against IP addresses and domain names of the hundreds of sources of threat intelligence that we pull in daily. And so that Shield endpoint resides on a device. Right now, they can be Windows and Android, and in the future can spread to iOS, Linux, and other devices. And what that does is it monitors the traffic flowing in and out of that machine and determines which zone should it assign it to. If it's that internal zone, it routes it over the Ziti network and uses the Cloud Ziti authentication providers, identity providers, and trust management there. Or if it deems it as the public internet, then it goes out to that intrusion applied threat intelligence database and asks, do we trust this connection? Do we know it? And do we understand it?
So if it's public internet, that's when it consults the Shield database. And if it's known to be the private connectivity via OpenZiti, you don't need to because of the zero trust is already baked into it. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's absolutely correct.
That's really cool. So how do you make the determination between public internet versus protected service?
So we're really using the Ziti supplied architecture for the client, which intercepts DNS requests and looks at the zone of the DNS request. And if it's to a known zone that's defined in the Ziti network, then it routes it that direction. If it's to an unknown zone, such as intrusion.com or so, then it realizes that's external to the network, and then it runs that through our threat intelligence database.
Yeah, that is really neat stuff. And so, what kind of interesting things does the threat intelligence database do? I've never had the opportunity to play with it. So, like, does it know if I'm logging in at like 10 o'clock in the morning and I'm never online at 10 o'clock in the morning? Does it know stuff like that, or does it have a big long white list of good sites and a big long list of bad sites? Can you talk a little bit about how that works?
Correct. So right now it's mainly about the reputation of sites. So we have a long history of 20 years of internet usage and abuse information that we factor in to our automated system to gauge a risk level of domains and IPs based on where they're registered, who they're registered to, the behavior on known threat lists, how often they show up on threat lists, and how new the domain is. If there's a domain that was created last week, and then all of a sudden you get an email that's inviting you to visit the domain, we gauge that to understand what's the risk of this, and then weigh that against popularity data to understand where the common resources are on the internet. So cool. It's more about the reputation observed for the activity of the domain across the information that we observe.
And the popularity data, do you derive that both from your own usage and other input, or is it only your own usage?
No, it's based on other input sources, and our own usage data.
That's really neat. Now, I know that, I don't know if everybody, maybe people who are watching this live stream probably are aware that the White House has put out this memorandum M2209. But if you're not, you can go check it. Actually, let me bring up the link here. I got the link. We can take a look at this. Here's what it looks like. You can go out and you can read this nice big long PowerPoint presentation. Talks about how zero trust and the zero trust strategy of the White House is really important. And so I assume that Intrusion has seen this memorandum and is aware of it. How does this fit in with the Shield products?
Well, it's a great question, and yes, we have in fact seen the memorandum. I think it's probably important to just give the viewers some context. Our CEO Tony Scott was previously the CIO of the federal government, and in fact appointed the first ever U.S. CISO. So he created a position and appointed the first ever government CISO.
Who knew the government had a CIO or a CISO? Like that's pretty.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat. So he appointed the very, very first one.
He sure did. And
Cool.
the second thing that he did was he realized there was no funding mechanisms for government organizations to upgrade their technology. So he co-authored the Government Modernization Act, which allowed government organizations to look at future savings through upgrades and justify spend in the current year to do upgrades in technology. And so the current release from the Biden administration is really the follow-on of the work that Tony did in 2018, because his work was to allow to free the funding up. Now they can actually start to give some guidance and the money is available. And so as far as the National Cybersecurity Strategy, the day it came out, Tony brought it to the management team and said, guys, let's make sure that this is top of mind and how can we utilize it? And it took us about 7 minutes to realize the combination of the OpenZiti stuff with the fabric and our threat intelligence, applied threat intelligence, actually met a very high standard of zero trust that's in the actual document. So we're very excited about that. And we're grateful for partners like OpenZiti to let us get to market quickly with those types of products.
That's awesome. Are there any particular features of OpenZiti that stood out to you that helped you make that determination, or was it the holistic product itself? Like, can you talk a tiny bit about that?
Well, I can, and then I'll let Blake correct anything I say that's wrong. The primary focus point, started looking at OpenZiti about December of 21, and we were fascinated with the ease of use, the management interface, and various features that it had. And it allowed us to build this mobile app that we have now in 6 months because we could leverage that code that was there. And so I would say in the very beginning, had the thoughtfulness of the architecture and the features that were available for us to quickly build it into our mobile endpoint. We estimated internally that we would have to spend at least 6 months and over $1 million to do that. And so it was a no-brainer for us to grab OpenZiti and roll it into what we were doing. What we didn't realize was the added benefit that we got being part of the OpenZiti community and being able to leverage into the cloud when that was an obvious point for us. So it was a great idea, a great option for us. And as a matter of fact, we are talking with some particular customers about embedding some more pieces of it into products that they want us to build. So you can correct my technology if you need to there, Blake.
Well, I agree with that. I'd say also the example open source code for Windows, Android clients allowed us to quickly accelerate development by learning, how to set up the infrastructure to intercept these requests and route them. Allowed us to quickly develop prototypes for that. And then the Cloud ZT offering allowed us to quickly deploy that without having to set up a lot of our own infrastructure and to leverage the existing facilities that were there.
Nice. Now, the mobile app itself, did you build it from ground up, or did you take the existing one and modify the bits that you needed to? Sounds like maybe the latter is what you did, right?
Yes, the first pass of that, the proof of concept, was taking the existing app and modifying it. And though we're looking at other modifications and building from the ground up for future releases.
Oh, cool. So you're going to just make a whole one of your own. And is that so that you can support both or all operating systems, have one unified client? Are you going down that path, or are you going to have different bespoke ones for each OS?
So we're thinking about...
We're trying to keep as much code in common as possible, and certainly shared libraries. But each of the operating systems has their own subtleties with how it handles, say, VPNs or DNS or other management. So I think there's always going to be some operating system specific code in there with how it works.
It definitely is entertaining to deal with all of the operating systems, isn't it?
Yeah, Clint, I was gonna out myself. In a former life when I had 2.3 million users on a SaaS product, we had 12 different ecosystems, and it was a complete nightmare. And so we are working hard to stick with one code bed and features and function turn off and off within those. So I would also say that we've learned a lot. What I want to really say is we've learned a lot from the OpenZiti community. So if I don't say it right now, I might not say it. I want to be thankful for this group and the thousands of hours that you saved us through input and answering questions and documenting out there. And so that's critical. And so just thank you very much from the
Well, we
bottom of
like
our
to hear
heart.
that. We can reciprocate that. We always like to hear the goodwill. That's great to hear. Glad that that's going well for you. That's really awesome. So, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but
No.
I was excited. Yeah, that's cool. Always like it. The community is, if for people who don't know, you can always go out to GitHub issues. You can go out to Discourse and file issues out there. Very open group. Like I said, I've met a couple people from the Intrusion team. Shout out to Jeremy and Adam. I've definitely been on the phone with them. I know you guys have talked to Mike Gorman quite a bit. Skip Barr might have been in there sometimes. So yeah, it's been a great collaboration. Um, do you remember, or were any of you aware of how you discovered OpenZiti? Because back in those days, even though OpenZiti's been around for quite some time and is relatively mature, it still wasn't getting found and discovered as often as obviously we'd like it to. So, do you remember how it was discovered?
I do. Go ahead, Chris.
No, you please.
We're actually in our own internal shift to implement zero trust for Intrusion as an organization. Our IT department was looking at it and came across it when we were searching for possible solutions. And so they started instrumenting it internally as a proof of concept. And then we realized there was value there. And because it fit in with what we were trying to do for applied threat intelligence. And that's the birth of the product.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. Came from the infrastructure team. We immediately, when Tony got here in the first quarter, he committed to get us to a cloud and an endpoint protection item by the end of the year. And so we then pivoted what we were using here. How can we get there in 3 or 4 months? And that's where we made the decision to go heavy with it. And it's been a great relationship. And even though we are going to continue to build more features and more apps, we will always be close to the open source code, and we've learned so much from it. So,
yeah, we've enjoyed getting the feedback too. You guys have a bunch of talented engineers, and there's been some feedback that's come back that's been really helpful. Speaking of future apps, you had mentioned this before and hinted at it, and I was wondering, one of the things I personally think, and we all think makes OpenZiti quite a bit different, is the SDKs that we have and the developer focused, and how you can take application embedded zero trust and really go to that next level. I heard you talking about some other apps. Are you planning to integrate an SDK into any other apps?
So the answer to that question is we have a theory based on this document of a way to utilize the SDKs. And so we're working right now with a customer on a use case for that. And I think the pivot that we've seen last month, we had the CISO for a very large global bank in here. And he was saying, I now have to report when there's any suspicious outbound traffic on my network. I don't have to fix it, but I have to report it. And so that's one of the things that we're great at with our applied threat intelligence, is seeing what's happening in and outbound on your network and obviously blocking. And so similarly with this, I think you're going to have more and more SaaS companies that have to embed some level of zero trust at scale in all of their applications. And so we're trying to play in that space right now.
And so OpenZiti gives you a really easy way of doing that, right? Like, precisely every identity and exactly where they're going to, particularly when you're getting an intercept, right? Can I put you on the spot? Can you show me a cool dashboard or something? Can you show me what that looks like? Like when you want a dog and pony to the customers, can you show them, hey, this is what you'll see?
Yeah. So you got two. So he can show you let me go first if you don't mind.
Oh, sure.
I apologize. Well, I think it's high level helps, right? So, nope, this isn't it. Okay, so it's too small. So our dashboard highlights what we're doing with. I'm trying to make it bigger for you, bud. Can you read that? Top left-hand corner.
Yeah, I can say shield activity, and I can see 34,000 kills.
Shows us how many kills there were in the last 24 hours, inbound and outbound. It then shows us the categorization of those risks. Why were they killed? Kind of what are the highest kill risk factors? Then you can see in the middle, you've got who the network talking to, what's going on with our network. On the far right, you can even see the countries that we're talking to. And then in additional views, you can jump into double clicking. I can share a link here in a minute with a a walkthrough demo of our dashboard. So I like to start there because that shows you all the things we do. What Blake's going to show you is how we present it to you on the mobile app. But conceptually, we're looking at all the traffic coming in and out, and that's how we do it. So go ahead, Blake. I'm
And
sorry
now
about that.
I'm actually, I can't help but notice, but this looks like a Windows app.
This one is. So the screenshot shown here is the Windows, and taking the OpenZiti reference design from open source and really putting our brand on that. Much of the functionality is the same in terms of importing identities and management there. But what's added to this is also the awareness of the threat intelligence for the public internet zone and abilities to perhaps create rules, to create exceptions or certain overrides for specific sites that you need to be able to access or so. So yes, this is the Windows. The Android, I don't have a good way of showing that on the screen right now.
Is it? You hold it up right here and just.
it looks about the same. Yes, and so, but I'll let Chris take you through the dashboards.
Cool. Well, let me throw up my screen then. So this is what you were talking about with the guided tour, right?
Yeah,
So,
there you go. So you just, it's actually self-guided. It's not on our website yet, but it's going to be. And so the top left just shows you what's going on, inbound, outbound, what kind of activities happening. And you jump down. Good.
And inside of here, where is there any? Will I see any place in here where OpenZiti was used, or is this all once Ziti feeds this and then the dashboard comes back?
This is the what I would call this is the executive demo of what we're doing. This is how they see what we're doing. So if it will not show you how OpenZiti was used, that would. So again, it shows you what's going. Why are we blocking malicious domains, poor reputation, high risk categories, those kinds of things.
Neat.
And then by country shows you what we're killing by country, and this is adjustable by risk level. This is where it's interesting for a SOC or not. These are dirty devices. We call them offending devices, but we know every network's dirty. So here in your SOC, you can actually drill down, and if you hit next, you can now go click on that IP, and it's going to tell you why we block that connection.
Hang on one second.
What the risk is.
Yep. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
What the risk is? Did I go too far?
And then finally, there's the traffic map, which people love. The traffic map that shows kind of.
Everybody loves a map, right? You got to have a map in your product.
I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you, you map.
It sells the whole thing. Without a map, it's garbage.
Yeah, exactly. And then this is just highlighting the volume of traffic in the region. And then finally, as a SOC, you may want to allow an IP address or a host. And so this allows you to cut in here, just provide quick access immediately. So call it closed list.
Now, this seems like a good place for me to ask the other question, which is, have you integrated with any of the APIs presented by either CloudZiti or OpenZiti, and do you plan to? Like, will this dashboard be tied into authorizing identities?
I'll let Blake answer.
What we're working on now is more Active Directory integration, so that if you have a large user base, and when it's Active Directory, I mean Azure, 365. That you can, easily import users, and if someone leaves your company, then you have the ability to centrally, deactivate access.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, in fact, I remember hearing a little bit about that. So, is that all provided by CloudZiti for you, or did you have to do any manipulations of your AD to feed that and to allow that? What was the experience like there? Was it relatively easy, relatively hard?
Well, this is something on our roadmap, but yes, it's a combination of authorization of the clients and using CloudZiti APIs.
That's really cool. That is so neat.
One thing I would add, Clint, is that one thing that has been awesome is because we have customers who have endpoints, they have on-premise devices, and they have clouds. We're currently using some of the OpenZiti to do the secure comms back to feed our dashboards, so that if we're going to show you that dashboard, we're not just blocking, we're actually using the certificate system and securely communicating what's happening on the endpoint device or the cloud back to that centralized location. And so in that way, we are integrating it into how we render data and reporting. That makes sense.
That is, it's super neat, so cool to see, and it's I can tell you, I would imagine most people would love to be able to ask you the same questions I'm asking. I get to be on the TV with you guys and ask these things, and I hope hopefully we're all watching right now and excited because it is exciting when people take the product and use it. Um, we've been chatting now already for 30 minutes. I don't know. I don't want to take all your time, but I could probably ask what kinds of different questions we can get into nerd stuff too. Is there anything that, I didn't cover that you wanted to bring up that I haven't remembered yet? We cover it
Well,
all.
I
We
think
covered a lot of ground.
I don't know if it's something that you should have brought up, but I think it's probably worth saying that my vision of the world is the bad actors aren't these threat actors or hackers. The bad actors are we solutions providers who A, don't do a good job of fully implementing our solutions for our clients, and B, don't communicate enough. We have silos around what we're doing because of competition. And so I think that's why we're the first bad guys. And the second bad guys are the companies, my customers, that want to have a false sense of security. And so
Hmm.
I would just say to you that what you're doing in OpenZiti and other forums is critical for our success, because the way to be safe is to have everything known to everyone as fast as possible. And unfortunately, some of the structures that we deal with don't allow that to happen. And so we're grateful to work with companies like OpenZiti. We're working with PF Sense, people that have real connection to how do we get the best answers out there as fast as possible. So I don't think you had a question for that, but I want to make the point to this group and encourage you to keep doing it because we need it. The only way we win this war is together.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great way to put it too. I mean, obviously, open source is core to Net Foundry. We believe very strongly that building the community is really the way to go. Keeping it free and open for people who want to run it on their own is great. Being able to provide a managed service for people who don't want to do that is also amazing too. So I think that's really awesome. Blake, anything that you want to say before we wrap up? Have you had a good
I'll just
time?
say that sometimes zero trust is perceived as an all or nothing approach, where you really have to get buy-in. But by us leveraging OpenZiti, we're able to do this both internally and externally in a staged manner, such that we can try it out and smoothly transition while operating both environments to gain confidence on that and show our users that it's not as complex as you think, and there are solutions there that allow for that transition.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be as complex as it used to be. That's for sure. OpenZiti, I think, makes it quite a bit easier. It's still, it's still complicated, but you can make it better with a good user experience, and you can make it so that it's not as hard as it has to be. Speaking of the word zero trust, I meant to ask this before. When you guys are talking to various people and you bring up the term zero trust, are you guys always in a situation where the people understand what zero trust is, or does anybody ever scoff at the term? I bring it up because lots of times people oh, zero trust. Here we go again, right? How does
This
that
is
work?
like, yeah, man, this is like fast food, bro. I mean, it's like fast food, right? I mean, people use, again, because of creative marketing campaigns and a desire to sell product, like people misuse the phrase zero trust. Everyone's zero trust. I was at a Gartner event
Exactly.
last June and they said, "Who's zero trust vendors?" And everybody
Everybody.
stands up.
Everybody.
So
Yeah,
I
you
think
can't say no.
the truth of the matter is we're actually starting to have conversations that talk about making it simpler. And one simple thing to do is figure out where the crown jewels are and only let certain people talk to them. And that's the first step in zero trust. A lot of solutions are signature based. And so it's just, they can't help themselves. The credentials we had a client that the CIO or CISO's, his VPN credentials got compromised.
Oh
Well,
boy.
we saw it was coming from the Ukraine. And so we killed those connections proactively.
Oh, that's neat.
But, so I think people tend to now shake their head when they say zero trust because they'd
Right.
be stupid not to. But I think it gets down to having a real conversation. I like to use the example of, do you want your cell phone talking to your work computer? Okay, great. Don't want my cell phone talking to Clint's work computer? No. That's the most simple version of zero trust. Just line that up and do it incrementally. I think a very large organization that may or may not have made this phone tried to get all their developers to go to a zero trust approach. There's 40,000 developers that just couldn't do it because it was going to affect productivity. And so I think you have to figure out first how to prioritize the movement. So talk about corporate IP, PII, those kinds of things, medical information, and then start protecting those. And over time, people start to understand it is much easier than it can seem when you're starting to pull the ocean. Was that too much? I'm sorry, Clint.
No, I think
You
that's
hit a hot
amazing.
button, bro.
That's great.
You hit a
That's
hot
great.
button,
Yeah.
man.
Oh,
Look,
tell me. I understand entirely.
I don't. When my marketing department puts zero trust in anything, I argue with them. Like, explain to me why this is here. And I argue with them only because I don't want to be a me too. I want to
Yeah.
make it simpler. I don't like hackers and I don't like bullies. I want to make it simpler.
Right. I love it. I love it. Making zero trust simple. I see what I did there.
I saw that. I thought you did there.
All right, Blake and Chris, it's been great talking to you, fellas. Thanks so much for taking the time and showing me around the Shield product. I think that was really neat. Such an innovative use of OpenZiti. Really excited to see somebody in the observation space doing this sort of stuff that OpenZiti just doesn't do. So, oh, yeah, Chris got one more.
I want to say to you, Clint, it's not every day I get to be on stage with someone who not only promotes a great product that we built with as Intrusion with OpenZiti, but also promotes Croatia. So I have to tell you, you're near and dear to my heart because you promoted Croatia and Intrusion Shield, which we built with OpenZiti.
Love it. Love it. What a way to end. All right, fellas. It's been great talking to you. Thanks for being on the stream. We'll see everybody on the